I never thought the man I trusted the most would betray me in a way that shattered my entire world. But there I was, frozen in the doorway, staring at the undeniable proof that nothing would ever be the same again. My hands trembled, my heart pounded, and I knew this wasn't just a mistake. It was a secret that could destroy us both. Emma and Ryan had always been the perfect couple. Or so it seemed. High school sweethearts turned husband and wife. Their love story felt like it was plucked straight out of a romance novel. Emma was the kind of woman who thrived on structure. She planned every holiday, remembered every anniversary, and kept their home running like clockwork. Ryan, on the other hand, was carefree and spontaneous, always finding ways to make her laugh and lighten her worries. They lived in a cozy suburban home, the kind with white picket fences and flower beds that looked picture-perfect. To outsiders, they were living the dream, a loving partnership, steady jobs, and plans to start a family. But behind closed doors, cracks were starting to form. Emma had noticed subtle changes in Ryan. He'd grown distant, spending more time at work and glued to his phone. At first, she brushed it off as stress, but the lingering doubts began to gnaw at her. Their late-night talks had become shorter, their laughter less frequent. She missed the man who used to look at her like she was his entire world. One evening, Emma decided to surprise Ryan with a romantic dinner. She spent hours preparing his favorite dishes, hoping to rekindle the spark between them. But when he walked through the door, his expression was guarded, almost guilty. He barely touched his food, and every glance at his phone felt like a knife twisting in her chest. Later that night, Emma found herself awake, staring at the ceiling as Ryan slept beside her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her heart raced with anxiety, but she kept telling herself she was overreacting. After all, Ryan loved her, didn't he? But deep down, she knew something had shifted. And as much as she wanted to deny it, a storm was brewing. The unease gnawed at Emma for days. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, that she was just being paranoid. But the signs were there, impossible to ignore. Ryan's late nights at work became more frequent, his phone always face down or locked with a new passcode. Emma noticed the small things first, how he started wearing cologne she hadn't bought him, or how he suddenly cared more about his appearance. Then came the excuses. He was too tired to talk, too busy to join her for dinner, and too stressed to be intimate. One evening, Emma decided to test her instincts. Ryan had left his phone charging on the kitchen counter while he stepped outside to take a call. Her heart pounded as she picked it up. Locked. Of course. But just as she was about to put it down, a notification popped up. A text. "I miss you already." Emma froze. Her vision blurred, and her fingers went cold. Her breath caught in her throat as the text disappeared from the screen, leaving her with nothing but questions and dread. She put the phone down just as Ryan walked back in. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice casual, but she heard the edge in it, the carefulness. "Yeah," she lied, forcing a smile. But the knot in her stomach grew tighter. From that moment on, Emma couldn't look at Ryan the same way. She watched him closely, analyzing every word, every glance, every hesitation. She noticed how he flinched whenever she reached for his phone, or how he avoided her gaze when she asked about his day. Her thoughts spiraled late into the night, playing out scenarios she didn't want to believe. Was it someone at work? A stranger? Or worse, someone she knew? One night, her fears became too much to bear. Ryan had claimed he was working late again, but Emma decided to follow him. She drove to his office, her hands trembling against the steering wheel. But when she arrived, his car wasn't there. Instead, she found it parked in front of a small motel on the other side of town. Emma's heart shattered as she sat in the car, watching him step out of the building. He wasn't alone. A woman followed him, her hand brushing against his arm as they laughed. Emma felt sick. Her worst fears were confirmed. She gripped the steering wheel, trying to keep herself together, but the betrayal cut too deep. Everything she thought she knew about Ryan, their love, their promises, felt like a lie. As Ryan drove off, Emma stayed frozen in place, tears streaming down her face. She knew there was no going back. The truth was out there now, and it threatened to destroy everything she had built. The next morning, Emma sat in the kitchen, staring at the untouched coffee in her mug. Her hands trembled, the events of the previous night replaying in her mind. Ryan had come home late again, slipping into bed without a word. She didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, she let the silence between them grow, thick and heavy, as if daring him to speak first. But he didn't. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Liam. Liam had been Ryan's best friend for years. He was charming, funny, and always knew how to make Emma laugh. More importantly, he was someone she trusted. She hadn't planned on texting him, but her emotions were spiraling, and she needed someone to talk to. Liam. Hey, everything okay? You seemed off the last time we talked. Emma hesitated before typing back. Emma, not really. Can we talk? Within minutes, Liam was at her door. The concern in his eyes made her chest tighten. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed someone to look at her like that, like she mattered. What's going on? He asked, stepping inside. Emma tried to hold back the tears, but the weight of it all came crashing down. It's Ryan, she choked out. I think he's cheating on me. Liam's jaw tightened, and he reached for her hand. Emma, I'm so sorry. The warmth of his touch sent a jolt through her, comforting but unfamiliar. She tried to pull away, but Liam didn't let go. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice softer now. He's a fool if he doesn't see what he has, Liam said, his thumb brushing lightly against her skin. Emma's heart pounded. She knew this was dangerous, that she shouldn't let herself feel this way. But the way Liam looked at her, like she was the only person in the world, made it impossible to pull back. Don't say that, she whispered, but her voice betrayed her. Why not? It's the truth. The air between them shifted. She felt it in the way his eyes lingered on her lips, in the way his grip tightened ever so slightly. A part of her screamed to stop, to push him away and call Ryan right then and there. But another part, the one that felt broken, unloved, and starved for attention, didn't want to let go. Before she knew it, Liam's hand was on her cheek, his thumb tracing her skin in a way that made her breath hitch. Emma. His voice was barely a whisper, but it sent chills down her spine. She closed her eyes, knowing what was coming next but powerless to stop it. When his lips brushed against hers, it was soft at first, hesitant, as if giving her a chance to pull away. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned into him, letting the hunger she had buried for so long take over. The kiss deepened, and Emma felt the tension that had been building inside her finally release. Liam's hands moved down her back, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. For the first time in months, Emma felt wanted, needed. But as their bodies pressed together, reality came crashing back. She pulled away, her breath ragged and her hands trembling. We can't, she whispered, but even as she said the words, her body betrayed her, lingering too close, aching for more. I know, Liam said, but his eyes told a different story. Emma stepped back, her head spinning. You should go. Emma. Please. Liam hesitated before nodding. He left without another word, but the look in his eyes stayed with her long after the door closed. Emma collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. She couldn't believe what she had just done. She had crossed a line, one she couldn't uncross. And yet, as much as the guilt gnawed at her, she couldn't ignore the way Liam had made her feel, alive, desired, and free from the crushing weight of Ryan's betrayal. But now she was trapped in a web of secrets. One wrong move, and everything could unravel. Emma couldn't stop replaying the kiss in her mind. It haunted her, both the guilt and the undeniable thrill of it. She avoided Liam's texts and calls for days, but her resolve crumbled the moment she saw Ryan's car parked outside that motel again. This time, she didn't just sit and watch. She followed him. Emma's hands trembled as she parked a few spaces away and slipped out of her car. Her legs felt like lead as she approached the room where Ryan had disappeared. The door was slightly ajar. She didn't knock. She couldn't. The sound of laughter drifted toward her, sharp and cruel, cutting through the silence of the dimly lit hallway. With her heart pounding, she pushed the door open just enough to see inside. What she saw made her stomach drop. Ryan was there, sitting on the bed with a woman Emma recognized immediately, Madison, her co-worker and so-called friend. The two of them were tangled together, their laughter dying as Ryan turned and saw Emma standing in the doorway. Emma, what the hell are you doing here? Emma's voice caught in her throat. What am I doing here? What the hell are you doing here? Madison scrambled to cover herself, while Ryan stood, his face shifting between guilt and anger. It's not what it looks like, he started. But Emma had heard enough. She stepped back, her breath shallow and her vision blurring. Don't, she said, her voice breaking. Don't you dare try to explain this. Ryan took a step toward her, but she held up her hand. Stay away from me. She turned and ran. By the time she made it home, Emma's tears had dried, leaving only rage and devastation. She paced the living room, her thoughts racing. The life she thought she had was gone, shattered in an instant. And the worst part, she wasn't sure if she even wanted it back. Her phone buzzed. It was Liam. She hesitated before answering. Emma? Are you okay? His voice was soft but urgent, and it made her chest tighten. No, she admitted. I'm not okay. Do you need me to come over? She paused, torn between wanting comfort and fearing what might happen if he did. But in the end, loneliness won. Yes. When Liam arrived, Emma broke down, and he pulled her into his arms without hesitation. You deserve better than this, he whispered, his hand stroking her hair. And for the first time, Emma believed it. But what happened next took her completely by surprise. Liam tilted her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. You're not alone in this, Emma. I'll be here no matter what. She leaned into him, her lips finding his in a desperate kiss that made her forget everything. Ryan Madison, the betrayal. All that mattered in that moment was Liam. But just as their passion ignited, a loud knock on the door broke the spell. Emma froze, her heart racing. Emma, open up. It was Ryan. Panic surged through her as Liam stepped back. What the hell is he doing here? Liam hissed. Emma's mind raced. She opened the door just enough to see Ryan standing there, his face twisted with anger. Who's here with you? Ryan demanded, trying to push past her, but Emma blocked his path. You don't get to act jealous, she snapped. Not after what you did. Ryan's eyes flicked past her, and when he spotted Liam, his expression darkened. Are you serious? Him. Emma straightened her shoulders. Yeah, him. Ryan shoved the door open and stepped inside. You think you can replace me with my best friend? Liam moved in front of Emma. You need to leave, Ryan. You don't get to tell me what to do, Ryan spat. Emma had had enough. You need to leave, she said firmly. We're done, Ryan. Whatever we had is over. For the first time, Ryan looked shaken. Emma, don't do this. We can fix it. No, we can't. Tears threatened to spill, but she held them back. Ryan looked at her one last time before storming out, slamming the door behind him. Emma sank onto the couch, her entire body trembling. Liam sat beside her, taking her hand. Are you okay? She looked at him, unsure how to answer. I don't know, she admitted. I just know I can't go back. Liam squeezed her hand. You don't have to. But as Emma looked into Liam's eyes, a new wave of fear crept in. She had escaped one betrayal, only to walk straight into something just as complicated, and maybe just as dangerous. And this time, she wasn't sure how it would end. The silence in the room felt suffocating. Emma sat on the edge of the couch, her hands still trembling as she replayed the confrontation with Ryan in her mind. The man she had loved, trusted, and built a life with had shattered everything. And now here she was, alone except for Liam, who sat quietly beside her. You don't have to stay, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam shook his head. I'm not going anywhere. His words should have comforted her, but instead they sent another wave of panic through her. She wanted to trust him, to believe that he was different. But after everything she'd just been through, trust felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. What if this is a mistake? Emma asked, her voice cracking. Liam reached for her hand, his grip steady. Then we'll figure it out. Together. His confidence unsettled her. How could he be so sure when she felt like her entire world was crumbling? The days that followed were a blur. Emma ignored Ryan's calls and texts, letting his desperate apologies pile up like unanswered questions. She couldn't bring herself to delete them, but reading them only reopened wounds she was struggling to close. Meanwhile, Liam became her anchor. He brought her food when she didn't feel like eating, sat with her in silence when the weight of her emotions felt too heavy, and held her close when the nights felt unbearable. But as comforting as Liam's presence was, it also complicated everything. One evening, as they sat together watching a movie, Liam reached for her hand. Emma froze, her breath catching. This isn't right, she said, pulling away. Liam frowned. What do you mean? I can't just move on like this, like Ryan never mattered. Liam's jaw tightened. Ryan didn't care about you the way he should have, Emma. You don't owe him anything. His words were true, but they didn't make her guilt disappear. She hated herself for feeling torn between the past she couldn't let go of and the future she wasn't sure she was ready for. Later that night, as Emma lay awake in bed, her phone buzzed again. Another text from Ryan. Ryan, I messed up. Please don't shut me out. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She wanted to delete it, to let herself be free of him. But the truth was, she wasn't ready to let go completely. The next day, Emma decided she needed closure. She agreed to meet Ryan at a cafe, neutral ground where emotions wouldn't run too high. Liam didn't like it, but he didn't try to stop her. Just be careful, he said before she left. When Emma saw Ryan sitting at the corner table, he He looked like a shell of the man she once loved. His eyes were red, and his shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry," he said before she even sat down. "I screwed up." Emma crossed her arms, forcing herself to stay strong. "You didn't just screw up, Ryan. You broke us." "I know." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I hate myself for what I did. But Emma, I love you. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Her heart twisted. She wanted to believe him, but the image of him with Madison was burned into her memory. "I can't," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't trust you." Ryan's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. "I understand." Emma stood to leave, but Ryan's next words stopped her cold. "I know about Liam." Her breath caught. She turned to face him, her pulse racing. "What?" "Don't play dumb, Emma. I saw the way he looked at you, even before we fell apart. And now, you think no one notices?" Panic flared in her chest. "You don't get to judge me," she snapped. "Not after what you did." Ryan leaned back, a bitter smile on his lips. "Maybe not. But don't pretend you're any better than me." Emma walked out without another word, but Ryan's accusation lingered. Was he right? Had she become the very thing she hated? When she got home, Liam was waiting for her. "How did it go?" he asked, concern etched across his face. Emma didn't answer. Instead, she walked past him, the weight of guilt and confusion pulling her down. She didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal she'd suffered or the betrayal she might have committed. Emma sat alone in the dimly lit living room, the echoes of her confrontation with Ryan still ringing in her ears. The truth was out now, raw, painful, and impossible to ignore. Ryan knew about Liam, and maybe that was what hurt the most. She wasn't just a victim of betrayal anymore. She had become a betrayer too. Her reflection in the window stared back at her, hollow and tired. She had spent so long trying to be the perfect wife, the one who forgave, who trusted, who believed in love. But somewhere along the way, she had lost herself. Liam knocked softly on the doorframe, pulling her out of her thoughts. "Emma!" She turned, meeting his worried gaze. He had been her rock through all of this, steady and unflinching. And yet, looking at him now, all she felt was uncertainty. "Do you regret it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "No," he said. "Do you?" Emma hesitated, the weight of her emotions threatening to suffocate her. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't know how to feel about any of this." Liam sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "You don't have to figure it all out right now," he said. "But whatever happens, I'm here." His words should have reassured her, but instead, they made her heart ache even more. She wanted to believe in him, in them, but how could she trust her feelings when everything around her felt so fragile? "I need time," she said finally, pulling her hand away. Liam nodded, though the hurt in his eyes was impossible to miss. "I'll give you that," he said softly before standing to leave. As the door closed behind him, Emma felt the weight of loneliness settle over her once more. But this time it felt different, less suffocating, more like a chance to breathe. In the days that followed, Emma started to rebuild. She focused on herself, her career, her friendships, and the parts of her life she had neglected for so long. She ignored Ryan's attempts to reconcile and kept Liam at arm's length, knowing she couldn't jump into something new before fully healing from the past. And as time passed, Emma began to see things more clearly. She realized that love wasn't always enough, that trust and respect mattered just as much. Ryan had broken those things, and no amount of apologies could fix them. But she also realized something else. Her connection with Liam had been born out of pain and vulnerability, not real stability. It was comforting in the moment, but it wasn't the foundation for something lasting. One evening, Liam showed up at her door again. This time, Emma didn't let him in. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice steady. "But I need to move forward, and I can't do that with you." Liam's face fell, but he nodded, understanding. "I just want you to be happy," he said before walking away. As Emma closed the door, she felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in months, she felt in control of her life, her choices. She wasn't the same woman who had stood in that motel parking lot, broken and betrayed. She was stronger now, wiser. And as she looked out at the fading sunset, she knew one thing for sure. She would never let anyone make her feel small again. What would you do if you were in Emma's shoes? Could you forgive betrayal? Or would you walk away and start over like she did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on this emotional journey. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-pounding stories like this one. Trust me, you won't believe what's coming next.